Millionaire single dad found a homeless woman digging through trash on Christmas Eve. What she said. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin our story. It was Christmas Eve in a small town, the streets lined with festive lights, yet the air was filled with a biting chill. People rushed by, hurrying to finish their holiday shopping, their laughter and excitement filling the crisp night air. But amid all the holiday cheer, one person remained unnoticed. A woman, bundled in a threadbare coat, was rummaging through a trash can at the corner of an alley. Her hands were trembling from the cold, and her face, dirty from the streets, held a look of quiet desperation. She didn't belong here. No one should have to live like this, especially not on Christmas Eve. As she sifted through the garbage, her mind was 1,000 miles away from the holiday festivities. She thought about the days when things had been different, when she had a home, a family, and dreams of a better future. But life had a way of turning things upside down, and now here she was, struggling to survive in the harshest of conditions. It wasn't a life she had chosen, but it was the one she was stuck with. Just as she was about to give up and walk away, a car pulled up nearby. The headlights illuminated the alley, casting long shadows against the walls. A man stepped out, his figure tall and broad, dressed in a coat that looked too expensive for this part of town. He paused, his gaze falling on the woman digging through the trash. For a moment, he hesitated. He was a successful man, a single father, with a life full of luxury and comfort. But something about the woman's situation caught his attention. Maybe it was the holiday spirit, or maybe it was simply the human decency that still lived within him. Without thinking, he walked over to her. "Hey," he said softly. "Are you okay?" The woman startled, looking up at him with wide, suspicious eyes. She didn't expect anyone to approach her, especially not someone dressed so nicely. "I'm fine," she muttered, turning away quickly, embarrassed by her situation. "You don't have to be here. I can't help you," she said, but there was a sadness in her voice that betrayed her words. The man crouched down to her level, ignoring her reluctance. "It's cold out here," he said, his voice gentle yet firm. "You don't have to do this alone." The woman felt a lump form in her throat. She had been through so much in her life, and now, to hear someone care, it felt almost too good to be true. She finally looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears she could no longer hold back. "I don't have anywhere to go," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sounds of the city. The man paused, his heart aching at her words. He didn't know what had brought her to this point, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't just walk away. "You're not alone," he said quietly, extending his hand toward her. "Come with me. Let's get you someplace warm." For the first time in a long while, the woman allowed herself to hope. She took his hand, and as they walked away from the cold, the city around them seemed a little brighter, a little warmer, as if the Christmas spirit had found its way to them after all. Asterisk, asterisk, millionaire single dad found a homeless woman digging through trash on Christmas Eve. What she said. Asterisk, asterisk. The man, whose name was Jack, led the woman, whose name was Sarah, to his car. It was a sleek black SUV, warm inside with the heat turned up, the faint scent of leather and cologne lingering in the air. Sarah hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. She had never been in a car like this before, let alone one driven by someone who clearly had so much. But there was something about Jack's presence, something genuine in his eyes, that made her trust him, even if just for a moment. She got into the car, feeling the warmth seep into her frozen bones. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jack nodded, his eyes focused on the road as he drove. "You don't need to thank me," he said quietly. "No one should be out there alone, especially not tonight." The words were simple, but they carried a weight that Sarah hadn't expected. They drove through the quiet streets of the city, passing by twinkling Christmas lights, families gathered together, and cozy homes filled with warmth. Sarah couldn't help but feel a pang of longing. She had once had a home, a family, a life full of promise. But somewhere along the way, it all slipped through her fingers. A series of bad decisions, lost jobs, and a broken heart had led her to where she was now, digging through trash on Christmas Eve. As the car turned into a gated community, Jack stopped in front of a large house, its lights glowing softly in the night. "This is where I live," he said as he turned off the engine. Sarah looked at the house, her heart sinking. She had never been inside a home like this before. It was too nice, too clean. She felt out of place, as if she didn't belong. "I don't want to impose," she said quickly, glancing at the door. "I can just sleep in the car or somewhere else." "No," Jack interrupted gently. "You're not imposing. It's Christmas Eve. Everyone deserves to be warm tonight." He opened his door and stepped out, walking around to open the passenger door for her. Sarah hesitated, then slowly stepped out of the car. As they walked to the front door, Jack paused. "Before we go inside," he said, "I need you to know that you're safe here. No one is going to hurt you. You're welcome to stay as long as you need." Sarah nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. She had been through so much in her life, but never had someone spoken to her with such kindness and sincerity. The front door opened, and they entered into a spacious, beautifully decorated home. The warmth inside enveloped her, and she could smell the scent of a freshly lit fire crackling in the fireplace. "Come on in," Jack said, leading her inside. "I'll make us some tea. You must be freezing." Sarah followed him into the living room, where a large Christmas tree stood, its lights twinkling softly in the dim light. She couldn't believe she was here. It felt like a dream. "This is your home?" she asked, her voice filled with awe. Jack smiled, a faint hint of sadness in his eyes. "Yes," he said softly, "but it's not just mine. I have a son, Noah. He's at his grandmother's house tonight, but we usually spend Christmas together." Jack's words were filled with a deep love for his son, and Sarah felt a flicker of hope in her chest. "You have a son?" she asked, surprised. Jack nodded. "Yeah, he's my world. He's been through a lot, too. I just try to make sure he knows he's loved, no matter what." Sarah's heart softened at his words. She could hear the pain in his voice. But there was also a sense of hope, of strength. It reminded her of the person she used to be, before everything fell apart. Jack led her to the kitchen, where he started to boil water for tea. Sarah stood by the counter, her hands trembling. She wanted to say something, to express her gratitude, but the words seemed to get stuck in her throat. She had never been in a situation like this before. Never had someone care for her like this. It felt both humbling and overwhelming. As Jack turned to hand her a cup of tea, their eyes met, and for a moment, Sarah saw something in his gaze that she hadn't seen in a long time: compassion. He didn't look at her with pity. He didn't see her as a burden. He just saw a person in need, and he was offering her kindness. "You're safe here," he said again, this time more firmly. "I promise." Sarah nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice shaky. Jack smiled warmly at her, then turned back to the stove. As Sarah sipped her tea, the warmth from the drink spread through her body, but it was the warmth from Jack's kindness that she would remember most of all. Tonight, for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. Millionaire single dad found a homeless woman digging through trash on Christmas Eve, what she said. The next few days passed in a blur for Sarah. Jack had been kind enough to offer her a room in his home, a place to stay while she figured out her next steps. It was everything she had dreamed of but never thought possible. The warmth of the house, the soft bed, the safety, it all felt like a dream she didn't want to wake up from. She spent the first few days in shock, unsure of how to handle the overwhelming kindness that Jack had shown her. She had never been treated like this before. Not since she had lost everything. As Sarah adjusted to her new surroundings, Jack seemed to fall into a routine with her. He had a busy life, running his own company, but he always made time to check on her. Whether it was bringing her a cup of coffee in the morning or sitting down to chat in the evening, Jack's quiet support made her feel like she had someone to rely on again. One afternoon, Jack invited her to join him in the kitchen, where he was preparing a simple meal. "I know you're probably used to eating on the go," he said with a smile, "but I figured we could have a proper meal today." Sarah looked at him, surprised. "I didn't want to be any trouble," she said softly. Jack shook his head, his expression sincere. You're not a trouble. You're a guest. And this is what we do for guests. We take care of each other. As they sat down to eat, Sarah felt the weight of her past, the years of struggle and heartache, slowly starting to lift. Jack didn't judge her. He didn't ask about her past or what had brought her to that point in life. He just accepted her, as she was, with no strings attached. For the first time in a long time, Sarah felt like she could breathe. The food was simple, but it tasted like a feast. The warmth of the meal, combined with the kindness Jack had shown, made Sarah realize just how much she had missed the feeling of being cared for. Later that evening, as they sat on the couch together, watching a Christmas movie, Sarah turned to Jack. I don't know how to thank you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You've already given me so much. Jack looked at her with a soft smile. You don't need to thank me, he said. You're here now, and that's enough. It was in that moment that Sarah realized she had begun to trust him. Trust wasn't something she gave easily, not after everything she had been through, but Jack had earned it. His actions spoke louder than words. He had taken her in without question, without judgment, and had given her a chance when she had nothing left to offer. Over the next few weeks, Jack and Sarah's connection deepened. They spent more time together, and Sarah began to open up to him about her past. She told him about the mistakes she had made, the relationships she had lost, and the moments that had brought her to where she was. Jack listened, never interrupting, never offering advice, unless she asked. He just listened. It was healing, in a way, to share her story with someone who didn't look at her with pity. He looked at her with understanding, and that was all she needed. But despite the comfort Jack had brought into her life, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong. The more she spent time in his beautiful home, the more she felt like an intruder. She couldn't help but feel that she was taking up space in a world that wasn't meant for her. One evening, as they sat in front of the fireplace, Sarah's voice broke the comfortable silence. Jack, I can't stay here forever, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I don't want to be a burden on you. Jack turned to her, his eyes filled with concern. You're not a burden, Sarah, he said firmly. You're a guest, and you're welcome here as long as you need. But if you want to leave, if you need space, I'll understand. Sarah shook her head, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. I just don't want to take advantage of your kindness, she admitted. Jack reached out and gently took her hand. You're not taking advantage of anything, he said softly. You're giving me a chance to help, and I'm glad to do it. You're not alone anymore. His words wrapped around Sarah like a warm blanket, and for the first time in a long time, she felt truly at home. It was clear to her that Jack wasn't just offering a roof over her head. He was offering her a chance at redemption, a chance to rebuild her life from the ground up. As she sat there, holding his hand, Sarah knew that things were starting to change. Slowly, but surely, she was beginning to believe in the possibility of a better future, one where kindness and trust could heal the deepest wounds. *** Millionaire single dad. Found a homeless woman digging through trash on Christmas Eve, what she said. ***. As the days went by, Sarah began to feel more and more at home in Jack's house. She had her own room now, and the unease she had felt at the beginning started to fade away. There was a sense of peace in the house that she hadn't known for a long time. It was as if Jack's kindness had begun to heal something deep inside of her, something she hadn't even realized was broken. Jack continued to support her in ways she hadn't imagined. He never made her feel like she owed him anything, and he gave her the space to figure out what she wanted to do next. But despite his generosity, Sarah felt guilty. She felt like she needed to contribute, to prove she wasn't just taking from him. She didn't want to be a burden. One afternoon, Jack was in his office working on some paperwork, and Sarah, who had been pacing around the house, decided to do something to feel useful. She went into the kitchen and started to clean. It was a small thing, but it made her feel like she was contributing to the household. As she was scrubbing the countertops, Jack walked in. He stopped in the doorway, watching her for a moment. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice amused but gentle. Sarah froze, embarrassed. "I just thought I'd clean up a bit. You've done so much for me, and I haven't really done anything to help." Jack walked over to her and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to clean for me, Sarah. I'm happy to do it myself." You're a guest here, remember? Sarah looked down, feeling a mix of gratitude and guilt. I know, but it just feels wrong to take up space and not contribute. I don't want to just live here without doing something. Jack smiled softly, his eyes filled with understanding. You've already done something, he said. You've given me the chance to help you. That's enough. His words, simple as they were, made something inside Sarah shift. It was hard for her to accept help, especially from someone who had so much. She wasn't used to being taken care of, and it made her uncomfortable. But as she looked at Jack, she realized he wasn't expecting anything in return. He wasn't helping her because he felt obligated. He was helping because he wanted to. That night, after dinner, Jack sat down on the couch with her. They had spent the evening talking about everything and nothing, and Sarah found herself opening up more than she had in a long time. I've been thinking about what comes next, Sarah said quietly. Jack looked at her, his expression thoughtful. What do you mean? He asked. Sarah hesitated for a moment. I can't stay here forever. I need to get back on my feet. I need to find a job, maybe even a place of my own. Jack nodded, his gaze steady. I understand, he said. But you don't have to rush into anything. Take your time. You've been through a lot, and you don't need to have it all figured out right now. Sarah's heart swelled with gratitude. It was the first time someone had ever told her she didn't need to rush. Her whole life, she had been running from one problem to the next, trying to fix everything as quickly as possible. But with Jack, it felt like she had the time to breathe, to think, and to heal. As the days passed, Sarah took small steps toward rebuilding her life. Jack helped her with job applications, offering advice where he could. He even introduced her to some of his colleagues, and while she still felt nervous around them, she was starting to believe that she had the potential to succeed. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset from the porch, Jack turned to Sarah with a soft smile. You're doing well, he said. You've made more progress in these few weeks than you think. Sarah smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. I never would have made it this far without you, she admitted. Jack shook his head. You did the hard part, he said. You took the first step. That's the hardest part of all. Sarah didn't have the words to express how much his support had meant to her. She had come into his life with nothing but the clothes on her back, and yet he had given her so much more than that. He had given her a chance, and for the first time in a long time, she believed that she could have a future again. But as much as Sarah appreciated Jack's help, she knew that she couldn't stay in his house forever. She needed to find her own way, to prove to herself that she could stand on her own. But for now, she allowed herself to be vulnerable, to accept the kindness Jack was offering. After all, she thought, maybe it wasn't such a bad thing to let someone take care of her for a while. Maybe, just maybe, she was worthy of that kind of care. Asterisk asterisk. Millionaire single dad found a homeless woman digging through trash on Christmas Eve, what she said. Asterisk asterisk. The days in Jack's house continued to pass in a peaceful rhythm. Sarah had settled into a routine, but there was still a lingering feeling of unease in her. She had begun to feel like a part of the family, but she still couldn't shake the feeling that she was living in someone else's world. Jack, on the other hand, was doing everything he could to make her feel welcome, even offering advice on finding a job and supporting her through the process of rebuilding her life. He was patient with her, letting her take her time to heal. Still, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt. She had never been one to rely on others, and it felt strange to be receiving so much help without being able to give anything in return. One afternoon, as Jack was at work, Sarah decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. The fresh air felt good against her skin, and it was a welcome break from the isolation she had sometimes felt in the house. As she walked, she found herself thinking more and more about the future. It had been a while since she dared to dream about what could be next for her. But lately, she had started to imagine a life beyond just surviving. She wanted to thrive. As she wandered the streets, Sarah's thoughts drifted to the job applications Jack had helped her with. She had received a few responses, but nothing that felt right. It wasn't that she wasn't qualified. It was more that she wasn't sure if she was ready for a full-time job again. She hadn't worked in so long, and the thought of going back into the workforce felt overwhelming. But at the same time, she knew she couldn't stay in Jack's house forever. It wasn't just about the guilt of taking up space. It was about finding her own independence again. That evening, as she sat in the living room, Jack noticed that something was off. He had been watching her for the past few days, and he could tell she was deep in thought. "Is everything okay?" he asked, sitting down beside her. Sarah looked up at him, her face softening. She didn't want to burden him with her worries, but she couldn't hold it in any longer. "I don't know what to do next," she admitted. "I don't feel like I'm ready for a job, but I also can't keep relying on you. I want to stand on my own 2 feet again, but I'm scared I won't be able to." Jack's expression softened, and he placed a hand on hers. "It's okay to be scared," he said gently. "You don't have to have everything figured out right away. Take your time. You've already made so much progress." Sarah sighed, feeling the weight of his words. She hadn't realized how much pressure she had been putting on herself. "But I've been here for weeks now," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I can't stay here forever. I need to do something." Jack nodded, understanding. "I know," he said. "But you're not alone in this. You don't have to have all the answers right now. Just take it one step at a time." Sarah sat in silence for a moment, letting his words sink in. She hadn't expected to find someone who would be so patient with her, especially not after everything she had been through. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Jack smiled softly. "You don't have to thank me. I'm just glad I could help." The next day, Sarah took a small step forward. She decided to attend a local job fair that Jack had told her about. It was a modest fair, but it was a start. She dressed in the best clothes she had, which were still simple and second-hand, but she did her best to look presentable. The nerves were overwhelming as she walked through the doors of the fair, but she reminded herself that this was her chance to take control of her future. As she made her way through the booths, Sarah spoke to a few recruiters. It was a little awkward at first, but slowly, she began to feel more comfortable. By the end of the day, she had handed out a few resumes and had made some valuable connections. She wasn't sure what would come of it, but she felt like she had taken a real step toward rebuilding her life. That night, when Jack came home, he asked how the fair had gone. "It was overwhelming," Sarah said. "But I think I made some progress. I'm not sure yet, but it felt good to take that step." Jack smiled, his eyes full of pride. "That's amazing, Sarah," he said. "I knew you could do it." The next morning, Sarah woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't going to let fear hold her back anymore. She had come this far, and she knew she was capable of more. Over the next few weeks, Sarah continued to push forward. She went to more interviews, made more connections, and began to feel more confident in herself. And through it all, Jack was there for her, supporting her, encouraging her, and giving her the space to grow. As the months went by, Sarah found a job that felt right for her. It wasn't the highest-paying job, but it was a start, and it was something she could be proud of. When she shared the news with Jack, his face lit up with a smile that made her heart swell. "I knew you could do it," he said, giving her a warm hug. Sarah felt a sense of accomplishment she hadn't known in years. She had done it. She had taken control of her life again, and it was all because someone had believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. *** Millionaire. Single dad found a homeless woman digging through trash on Christmas Eve. What she said. ***. Sarah had finally found a rhythm in her life. After months of uncertainty and self-doubt, she had landed a job that felt right. It wasn't the highest-paying job, but it was a start, and it was a step toward independence. Jack had been her unwavering support throughout it all. His encouragement had given her the strength to keep going when she thought she couldn't. She had come so far from the woman who had been digging through trash on Christmas Eve. Now, she was working a steady job, paying her bills, and slowly but surely rebuilding her life. One evening, after a long day at work, Sarah returned home to find Jack sitting on the couch, his expression more serious than usual. She hesitated for a moment before sitting down beside him. "What's going on?" she asked softly. Jack looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and concern. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he began. "You've made so much progress, Sarah. You've turned your life around, and I'm really proud of you. But I think it's time for you to take the next step." Sarah frowned, unsure of what he meant. "What do you mean?" she asked. Jack took a deep breath. I think you're ready to live on your own again, he said gently. You've built the foundation, and now it's time to stand on your own 2 feet. I know you've been living here, and I've been happy to help, but I think you're ready to take that leap. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She had never imagined leaving Jack's house so soon. It had become her safe space, her sanctuary. But deep down, she knew he was right. She had grown so much since the day he had found her. I don't know if I'm ready, she whispered, feeling the weight of the decision. I've gotten so used to having you here. Jack reached out and placed a hand on hers, giving it a reassuring squeeze. I know it's scary, but you've shown yourself that you're capable of so much more than you think. It's time for you to live the life you've been working so hard for. Sarah took a deep breath, her mind racing. She had been living in Jack's house for months, and it had become a comfort she wasn't sure she was ready to leave behind. But the truth was, Jack was right. She had to take this step. It wasn't just about her independence, it was about proving to herself that she could stand on her own. The next few weeks were filled with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Jack helped her look for apartments, and they spent hours discussing what she needed and where she wanted to live. He even offered to help with the deposit, but Sarah insisted that she needed to do it on her own. She had come this far, and she wanted to prove to herself that she could do this without anyone's help. Finally, after weeks of searching, she found the perfect little apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She signed the lease and spent the next few days packing her things, carefully selecting what she would take with her. On the day she moved in, Jack offered to help, but Sarah insisted on doing it herself. As she walked into her new apartment, her heart swelled with a sense of accomplishment. This was her space, her new beginning. She had done it. She had taken the leap. That evening, after everything was unpacked and settled, Sarah stood in the middle of her new apartment, taking it all in. The walls were bare, but there was a sense of hope in the air. This was her fresh start. As she sat down on the small couch she had bought, she picked up her phone and sent Jack a message. I did it. Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done it without you. Almost immediately, her phone buzzed with a reply. You did it, Sarah. I knew you could. I'm so proud of you. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she read his message. It had been a long, difficult journey, but she had made it. And now, for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. She was living her life, and she was doing it on her own. The next few months passed by in a blur. Sarah settled into her new apartment and continued to work hard at her job. She made new friends and started to feel more confident in herself. Jack remained a constant presence in her life, offering support when she needed it, but never pushing her to depend on him. He respected her newfound independence and was there whenever she needed someone to talk to. One evening, as they were talking on the phone, Sarah felt a deep sense of gratitude. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything. I don't think I've ever said it enough, but I really appreciate you. Jack's voice on the other end of the line was warm and filled with kindness. You don't need to thank me, Sarah. You did all the hard work. I'm just glad I could be a part of your journey. And in that moment, Sarah realized something. She had come so far from the woman who had once dug through trash on Christmas Eve. She had built a new life for herself, one that was filled with hope, independence, and the support of a man who had believed in her when she hadn't believed in herself. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire single dad found a homeless woman digging through trash on Christmas Eve what she said. Asterisk, asterisk. The months passed, and Sarah's life continued to improve in ways she never imagined possible. Her job was stable, her new apartment felt like a sanctuary, and the sense of pride she felt from standing on her own 2 feet was indescribable. But as the days went by, a new challenge began to emerge. Sarah had built a life for herself, but now there was a lingering question. What about the future? As much as she had accomplished, there was still the uncertainty of what came next. And she couldn't ignore the deeper feelings that had begun to develop toward Jack. She had always admired him for his kindness and generosity, but recently, those feelings had shifted. She was no longer just grateful for his help. She found herself thinking about him in a different way. one that went beyond friendship. She knew Jack had been there for her through thick and thin, but now she wondered if he felt the same way. One evening, as she was sitting in her apartment, lost in thought, her phone rang. It was Jack. "Hey, how's it going?" he asked with his usual warm tone. "Everything's good," Sarah replied, trying to sound casual. "Just figuring things out, you know." Jack laughed softly. "I get it. You're doing great. I'm really proud of you, Sarah." Hearing those words never failed to make her feel better, but tonight they stirred something deeper inside her. "Thanks," she said, her voice quieter. "I don't know what I would have done without you." There was a pause on the other end of the line before Jack spoke again, his voice more serious. "I'm glad I could be there for you. You've worked so hard to get where you are. I'm really happy for you, Sarah." Sarah felt her heart race a little. She had to admit, a part of her wanted to hear something more, something beyond the friendship they had shared. But she couldn't bring herself to say it, to ask if there was something more between them. As the days went on, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was at a crossroads in her life. Her job was steady, her independence was growing, but there was still something missing. She missed the sense of connection, the feeling of being truly seen by someone who cared. And Jack had become that person. But what if he didn't feel the same way? What if it was just her own loneliness clouding her judgment? It wasn't until a week later, when she received a surprise invitation, that things began to shift. Jack called her again, this time with excitement in his voice. "Hey, I've got a company event coming up," he said. "I'd love for you to come with me. It's just a casual thing, but I thought it'd be nice for you to join me." Sarah felt a flutter of surprise and something else, hope. "I'd love to," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves running through her. The event was the following Saturday, and when the day arrived, Sarah found herself standing in front of her mirror, unsure of what to wear. It wasn't an extravagant gala, but it was a step into Jack's world, and she wanted to look and feel confident. She chose a simple, elegant dress, one that made her feel comfortable but still special. When she arrived at the venue, Jack was already there, waiting for her by the entrance. He greeted her with a smile that made her heart skip a beat. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes scanning her with genuine appreciation. Sarah's cheeks flushed, and she smiled shyly. "Thanks, you look great too." As they entered the event together, Sarah couldn't help but feel like an outsider in a room full of people who were used to this kind of lifestyle. The polished suits, the formal conversations, it was all so different from the world she had come from. But Jack made her feel at ease. He introduced her to a few of his colleagues, and although Sarah was nervous at first, she began to find her rhythm. Jack was always by her side, making her laugh and keeping the conversation light. It didn't take long for Sarah to realize that this was more than just a simple work event. There was something in the way Jack looked at her, something in the way he made her feel like she belonged. As the night went on, Jack pulled her aside, away from the crowd. "Sarah," he said softly, his voice low, "I've been thinking about something for a while now. I didn't want to make things awkward, but I need you to know something." Sarah's heart raced. She looked up at him, unsure of what was coming. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack took a deep breath, then looked directly into her eyes. "I care about you, Sarah, more than I've ever let on, and I don't just mean as a friend." Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. For a moment, she couldn't speak. She had been waiting for this, but hearing it out loud made her feel vulnerable in a way she hadn't expected. "I care about you too," she finally managed to say, her voice shaky. Jack smiled, a gentle, reassuring smile. "I know this is complicated, but I don't want to keep pretending that I don't feel something more. I want you to know that, no matter what happens, I'm here for you." Sarah's heart swelled with emotion. She had always thought that she would be alone forever, that she would never be able to let someone in. But here, in this moment, with Jack by her side, she realized that maybe she didn't have to be alone after all. Maybe, just maybe, they could build something together. *** millionaire single dad. Found a homeless woman digging through trash. On Christmas Eve, what she said. ***. The weeks following the event were filled with a sense of new beginnings. Jack and Sarah's connection deepened, and as their relationship evolved, so did Sarah's sense of self-worth. She had never imagined that a simple gesture of kindness could change her life in such profound ways. She now had the stability she had longed for, not just in her career but in her heart as well. However, even though she was thriving in many areas of her life, she still carried a deep-seated fear that things would fall apart. She was afraid of losing the one constant thing in her life, the support Jack had so generously given her. One evening, after a busy day at work, Sarah was sitting in her apartment when her phone buzzed with a message from Jack. "Hey, I need to talk to you about something. Can we meet tonight?" Sarah's stomach flipped with nerves. They had spent a lot of time together recently, but there was something about the tone of his message that made her anxious. She quickly texted him back, agreeing to meet at a local coffee shop. When they sat down across from each other, Jack looked at her, his eyes serious yet filled with warmth. "Sarah, I've been thinking a lot lately," he started, his voice steady. "I know we've both been trying to move forward and find our place in all of this, but there's something I need to ask." Sarah's heart raced as she waited for him to continue. She had no idea what he was about to say, but she could sense that it was important. Jack took a deep breath, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. "I've never been one to rush into anything," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "But I know what I feel, and I know how much you mean to me. I want to be with you, Sarah. I want to make this work between us." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. She had been afraid of this, afraid that Jack might not feel the same way, that his kindness was all there was to their relationship. But hearing him speak so honestly, so openly, made her realize just how much he truly cared. Her mind raced, and for the first time in a long while, she felt truly seen. "Jack," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I care about you too, more than I ever thought possible." Jack's expression softened, and he reached across the table to take her hand. "Then let's do this together," he said gently. "I know it's not going to be easy, but we can figure it out. I'm not going anywhere, Sarah." Sarah squeezed his hand, a tear slipping down her cheek. She had come so far, from living on the streets to now, sitting here with someone who genuinely wanted to be a part of her life. It felt like a dream she was afraid to wake up from, but in that moment, she realized it wasn't a dream, it was her new reality. As the weeks passed, Sarah and Jack continued to grow closer. They spent more time together, supporting one another through their respective challenges. Jack's company had its ups and downs, but through it all, Sarah was there for him, just as he had been there for her. Their relationship wasn't perfect. There were times when they disagreed, times when they faced challenges, but through it all, they had each other, and that made all the difference. Sarah's confidence continued to build. She had started taking on more responsibilities at work, and with Jack's encouragement, she had even begun to think about furthering her education. It was strange to think that not too long ago, she had been struggling just to survive. Now, she was planning for a future that was filled with possibilities. One evening, as they sat together at home, Sarah looked over at Jack, a smile tugging at her lips. "I don't think I could have done all of this without you," she said softly. Jack looked at her, his eyes filled with warmth. "You could have," he replied. "I just gave you the push you needed to believe in yourself." Sarah nodded, knowing that he was right. But there was more to it than just that. Jack had been her constant, her rock, when everything else felt uncertain. She had always felt like she had to do everything alone, but Jack had shown her that it was okay to lean on someone, to trust them with her heart. As they sat together, their fingers intertwined, Sarah felt a sense of peace she had never known before. She had found something she hadn't even realized. She was looking for a partner who accepted her, flaws and all. For the first time in her life, she felt like she truly belonged, not just in Jack's world, but in her own. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living, and for the first time, she was living for herself. Jack was there, and he would always be there. But Sarah knew now that she could stand on her own, too. Together, they were creating a future that was built on love, trust, and the belief that they could face anything that came their way. And in that moment, Sarah knew she had found her place in the world. Asterisk, millionaire single dad found a homeless woman digging through trash on Christmas Eve, what she said. Asterisk. Time continued to pass, and Sarah found herself more settled in her new life than ever. Her job was going well, and she had started to develop a strong sense of self, something she had struggled with for so long. She had a sense of security now that came from knowing she could take care of herself, something she had almost forgotten was possible. Her relationship with Jack had deepened even further, and they were spending more time together, not just as partners, but as friends who trusted each other completely. They had their routine quiet evenings at home, shared meals, conversations that lasted well into the night. But as Sarah settled into this new rhythm, she began to sense that there was something more, something looming on the horizon. Jack had always been upfront with her about the challenges he faced in his business. His company, though successful, was under pressure, dealing with competition and the constant demands of running a growing enterprise. Jack had never made her feel like it was a burden, but she could see the toll it was taking on him. One evening, as Sarah was preparing dinner, she noticed Jack sitting at the kitchen table, looking over some papers. He looked exhausted, the lines of stress more apparent than usual. "Hey, what's going on?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Jack looked up at her, his expression weary but soft. "It's just work stuff," he said, rubbing his temples. "It's been a rough couple of weeks. The company's been facing some financial pressure, and there are some decisions that need to be made." Sarah nodded, understanding that Jack had always been the one to shoulder his responsibilities on his own. But she could tell that this time, it was different. "What kind of decisions?" she asked gently, walking over to sit beside him. Jack took a deep breath, then leaned back in his chair. "I've been thinking about selling part of the company," he said. "It would help us stay afloat and secure some long-term stability, but it's a huge decision. It could change everything." Sarah's heart sank. She knew how much Jack had built his company, how much it meant to him. The thought of him losing something so important was hard to imagine. "I know it's not an easy decision," she said softly, "but you're not alone in this. Whatever you decide, I'm here for you." Jack looked at her, his eyes softening. "I know you are," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But it's my responsibility. I have to do what's best for the business, for Noah, for everyone." Sarah felt a deep sense of empathy for him. She knew what it was like to feel responsible for others, to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. But she also knew that no one should have to go through it alone. "You don't have to do this alone, Jack," she said, her voice firm. "You've always been there for me, and now it's my turn to be there for you. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together." Jack smiled faintly, the stress in his eyes softening a little. "I don't know what I would do without you," he said quietly. The next few days were filled with tense moments as Jack worked through the difficult decisions regarding his company. He spent long hours on the phone with investors, strategizing with his team, trying to figure out a way forward. Sarah could tell that the pressure was wearing on him, but he refused to talk about it much. He was determined to carry it alone, just like he always had. But she knew better. She knew that sometimes the best thing you can do is let others in, to share the burden. One afternoon, as Jack returned home after yet another long day at work, Sarah was waiting for him in the living room. She could see the exhaustion on his face, and without a word, she walked over and took his hand. "Jack," she said softly, "I know you're trying to handle everything on your own, but you don't have to. I'm here. I'm with you." Jack looked at her, his gaze flickering with a mixture of appreciation and reluctance. "I don't want to burden you with this," he said, his voice low. "It's my problem, not yours." Sarah shook her head, her grip on his hand tightening. "Jack, we're in this together. This isn't just your problem. It's ours, and I want to be there for you, just like you've always been there for me." Jack's eyes softened, and for the first time in days, he let out a deep sigh. "I don't know what I've done to deserve you, Sarah," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've never been good at asking for help, but I think I'm starting to realize that I don't have to do everything on my own." Sarah smiled, gently pulling him into an embrace. "You don't have to," she whispered. "We've got each other, remember?" Over the next few weeks, Jack made the difficult decision to sell part of his company. It was a tough call, but it was the right one for the future of his business. As the process unfolded, Sarah stayed by his side, offering support and reassurance when he needed it most. Together, they navigated the uncertainty, working through the challenges and celebrating the small victories along the way. Through it all, their bond grew stronger, proving that no matter how difficult life became, they could face anything as long as they had each other. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire single dad found a homeless woman digging through trash on Christmas Eve, what she said. Asterisk, asterisk. As weeks passed, Jack's decision to sell part of his company brought a certain sense of relief. The pressure had lifted slightly, but there was still much work to do, and Sarah could see that Jack had thrown himself even deeper into his responsibilities. While he was more present with her than he had been before, there was a new weight in his eyes, an unease that lingered behind his smiles. Sarah, ever observant, noticed these things, and her heart ached seeing the man she had come to care so deeply for carry the burden alone. She knew he wasn't one to open up about his struggles, but she also knew that this time, it was different. This time, she couldn't just stand by and watch. One evening, after Jack had come home late from another exhausting meeting, Sarah couldn't ignore the way he looked, exhausted, tense, and distant. "Jack, what's really going on?" she asked softly, sitting down beside him on the couch. Jack, who had been staring out the window, looked at her for a long moment before exhaling sharply. It's a lot, Sarah," he admitted. "Between the company, Noah, everything. I feel like I'm failing in some way. Like no matter how much I do, it's never enough." His voice cracked slightly, a vulnerability that Sarah rarely saw. She placed a hand on his, squeezing it gently. "Jack, you're not failing. You're doing everything you can, and you don't have to do it all by yourself." Jack gave her a sad smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I don't know how to ask for help, Sarah. I don't know how to stop carrying the weight of all of this." Sarah could feel the pain in his words, and it hurt her to see him like this. A man who had always been so strong now, so worn down. "You don't have to do it alone," she said, her voice firm. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. We'll figure this out together." Jack looked at her, his eyes softening for the first time in what felt like weeks. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but then hesitated, the words stuck somewhere in his throat. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared, Sarah," he admitted, his eyes filled with a mix of vulnerability and uncertainty. "Scared that I won't be able to fix everything. Scared that I'll let you down, or Noah, or even myself." Sarah's heart broke for him. She had never imagined seeing Jack, the strong, confident man who had always been her rock, in such a fragile state. But in that moment, she realized how much they had both been through, how much they had overcome together. "You're not going to let anyone down," she said, her voice steady with conviction. "You've done everything right. You've built this company from the ground up. You've been an amazing father to Noah, and you've been there for me, in ways I didn't even know I needed." Jack turned to her, his expression softening as he listened to her words. "But I've never been able to let anyone else carry the load," he said, his voice barely audible. "I don't know how to let someone help me." Sarah looked at him, understanding more than he could ever know. "Jack, you don't have to carry everything on your own," she said, her voice gentle but unwavering. "We're a team, remember? We've been through so much already. Whatever happens next, we'll face it together. You don't have to do it all by yourself." For a long time, Jack didn't say anything. He just sat there, looking at her, as if weighing her words. Then, finally, he nodded. "I don't know how to let go of that, but I'll try," he said quietly. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with warmth. "I'll never give up on you, Jack. You're not alone." The days that followed were filled with a renewed sense of collaboration. Jack, though still carrying the weight of his responsibilities, began to allow Sarah into more of his life, especially the parts that had always been hidden. He shared his thoughts about the company's future, his concerns about Noah, and his fears about the future. And while it wasn't always easy, Sarah knew that this was what they needed to build trust, openness, and support. One evening, as they were sitting together in Jack's living room, he turned to her, his face thoughtful. "You know," he began, "I've spent so much time trying to handle everything on my own. I've been so focused on fixing everything that I forgot about what really matters. What I really need is you and Noah, and just having the people I love around me." Sarah's heart swelled at his words. She knew that the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, and that challenges would always be a part of their lives. But in that moment, with Jack by her side, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known before. "We've got each other," she said softly, "and that's enough." And so, As the seasons changed, Sarah and Jack continued to face their challenges, but they did so together, no longer trying to carry the weight alone. They were stronger, not because they had solved everything, but because they had learned to lean on each other, to trust that they could face whatever came their way as a team. And for the first time in a long time, they both believed that the future was full of possibilities, not just for Jack's company or Sarah's career, but for them, together. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire single dad found a homeless woman digging through trash. On Christmas Eve, what she said. Asterisk, asterisk. Months passed, and the days of uncertainty that had once plagued Sarah seemed to fade into the past. She was no longer the woman who had lost everything. Now, she was standing tall, embracing a future that seemed brighter with each passing day. She had a job that she was passionate about, an apartment that she was proud of, and a relationship with Jack that had deepened beyond friendship. There was a sense of peace in her life, but even in the quiet moments, Sarah couldn't help but wonder what was next for her and for them. One evening, Jack sat beside her on the couch, his expression serious, as he often became when he was deep in thought. Sarah had noticed that, though things were going well for both of them, there were still moments of tension in Jack. His company had stabilized somewhat, but there were still unresolved issues that he carried with him. "Sarah," he began, his voice soft but steady. "I've been thinking a lot about the future, about ours, about where we're heading and what we want out of life." Sarah turned to look at him, sensing the weight of his words. They had always been open with each other, but she could feel that this was different. "What do you mean?" she asked quietly. Jack took a deep breath, as if gathering his thoughts before speaking. "I want to build something more than just a life where we survive. I want us to have a future together, a real one," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I know we've both been through a lot, but I want you to know that I see us going somewhere beyond where we are now. I see us building a life together, maybe a family, a home, everything." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't realized how much she had longed for those things, for a future she could share with someone who understood her, who wanted the same things. She had always been afraid to dream of such a future after everything that had happened to her. But with Jack, it felt like it was possible. "I want that too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But what if we're not ready? What if I'm not ready?" Jack smiled at her, the warmth in his eyes reassuring. "We'll never be fully ready, Sarah. Life doesn't wait for us to have everything figured out. But I know one thing for sure, whatever comes next, I want to face it with you." Sarah felt a sense of relief flood through her, the tension she hadn't even realized she was holding onto, melting away. She had feared that maybe Jack's feelings for her were fleeting, that he would eventually realize that he didn't need her in his life. But here, in this moment, she realized that the love they shared wasn't just about surviving, it was about living, together. "I want to be with you too, Jack," she said softly, reaching for his hand. "I've never felt so sure of anything in my life. I'm ready to build that life with you, to make our future something beautiful." Jack squeezed her hand, his expression filled with emotion. "Then that's what we'll do," he said. "We'll take it one step at a time. But we'll do it together, and no matter what, we'll always have each other." The conversation brought a sense of clarity to Sarah, a confidence she hadn't known she needed. She realized that all the uncertainty she had felt in the past had been replaced by a newfound trust in herself, in Jack, and in their future. They were a team, and no matter the obstacles, they would face them together. As the weeks went on, Sarah and Jack began to make plans. They talked about everything from their careers to where they wanted to live, to their hopes and dreams for the future. The more they discussed, the more they realized how well their visions for the future aligned. They both wanted stability, but they also wanted adventure. They wanted a family, but they also wanted to continue growing in their careers. Most importantly, they both wanted to be with each other, supporting each other through whatever came their way. The relationship between them had shifted in the best possible way. It wasn't just about two people trying to make their way through life, it was about creating something lasting, something meaningful, something they could look back on with pride. Jack's business continued to grow, and Sarah's career flourished. They spent weekends together, exploring new places, making memories, and simply enjoying each other's company. And every evening, when they came home, it was to a place that felt like home, a place where they had built a life together. Months turned into a year, and as they celebrated the passing of time, they found themselves more in love than ever. They had faced challenges, yes, but they had also learned that love wasn't just about the easy moments. It was about being there for each other in the tough times, supporting each other through the ups and downs. And as Sarah stood beside Jack, looking out over the future they had planned together, she realized that she had found everything she had ever wanted. A life full of love, of possibility, and of the kind of happiness she had once only dreamed of. And most of all, she realized that with Jack by her side, she was home. Forever. Asterisk asterisk. Millionaire single dad. Found a homeless woman digging through trash. On Christmas Eve, what she said. Asterisk asterisk. As Sarah and Jack continued to build their life together, there was a new sense of clarity between them. They had made it through the most difficult moments, and now, their future was something they could look forward to with excitement rather than fear. Their connection grew stronger with each passing day, and the more they talked about their dreams, the more they realized how much they shared. It was clear now that they were truly building a future together. It was a bright morning in early spring when Jack came home from a meeting looking more preoccupied than usual. Sarah was preparing breakfast when he entered, his briefcase in hand and his brow furrowed. She could see the familiar signs, the exhaustion, the tension in his posture. She knew something was on his mind. "Everything okay?" she asked, placing a plate of eggs and toast on the table for him. Jack sat down, rubbing his temples, his expression weary. "It's the company," he began, exhaling deeply. "I've been offered a huge investment deal. It's an incredible opportunity, but—" His voice trailed off. Sarah placed her hand over his. "But?" she asked gently. Jack looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of excitement and doubt. "But it comes with conditions. It would mean changing a lot of things, including the way the business is run. It could take us in a direction I'm not entirely sure I want to go." Sarah nodded, understanding the weight of the decision he was facing. She knew that his company meant everything to him, and this was the kind of choice that could define his future. She squeezed his hand, offering her support. "Jack, you've worked so hard to get here, but you also have to think about what you really want, not just what others want from you. Whatever you decide, I'll be here for you." Jack smiled softly at her words, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "I don't know what I would do without you," he said quietly. "You've given me perspective when I needed it most. I've been so focused on my work that I've forgotten to consider what's truly important. You and us." The sincerity in his voice made Sarah's heart swell. She had always known that Jack was a man of integrity, but hearing him say this reminded her of how far they had come together. "It's not just about the business, Jack," Sarah said. "It's about what makes you happy, and what makes us happy." Jack took a deep breath, the decision weighing heavily on him. "I know you're right," he admitted, "but it's hard to turn down an opportunity like this. It could make all the difference for the company's future." Sarah smiled gently. "But if it's not the right fit for you, then it's not the right opportunity. You've already built something incredible. Whatever direction you choose, you've got what it takes to make it work, and you don't have to do it alone." Jack's eyes softened as he looked at her, his heart full of gratitude. "I think I've known what I need to do for a while now," he said. "I need to stick to the values I believe in, and those values include you, Sarah." Sarah felt a rush of emotion as he spoke. She had always known that Jack was driven by his principles, but hearing him say this made her realize just how deeply connected they had become. She could see the strength in him, the same strength that had gotten them both through the toughest times. "I'm so proud of you," Sarah said softly. "And whatever happens next, I know we'll handle it together." Over the next few days, Jack made the difficult decision to turn down the investment deal. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of doubt, but in the end, he knew it was the right choice for him and for their future. The relief he felt after making the decision was palpable, and Sarah could see the change in him. He seemed lighter, more at peace with the path ahead. They celebrated the decision together, not with grand gestures or fancy dinners, but with a quiet evening at home, reflecting on everything they had accomplished. As the months passed, Jack's company continued to grow, but it did so on his terms. He found a balance between success and staying true to his values. He and Sarah continued to build a life that was full of love, trust, and shared dreams. One evening, as they sat on the porch together, watching the sunset, Jack turned to Sarah with a smile. "You were right," he said. "It wasn't the money or the deals that mattered. It was the people I have by my side. You and Noah." Sarah smiled, her heart full of warmth. "I think we've created something pretty special," she said. Together. They sat in silence for a while, enjoying the peace that had settled over them. Sarah had come a long way from the woman who had once been lost and alone. She had found her place not just in Jack's world, but in her own. And as they sat together, side by side, she knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, hand in hand. Asterisk. Asterisk. Millionaire. Single dad. Found a homeless woman. Digging through trash. On Christmas Eve. What she said. Asterisk. Asterisk. As the years passed, Sarah and Jack's relationship flourished, grounded in mutual respect, love, and unwavering support. They had faced so many challenges together, but now, as they looked back, it felt as though everything had come full circle. Sarah's life had been completely transformed, not just because of the opportunities Jack had given her, but because of the unwavering belief he had in her. She had gone from feeling like she was surviving to knowing she was truly living. Their home was no longer just a roof over her head, it was a place of warmth, love, and endless possibility. Jack's company, though still navigating its challenges, had grown steadily, always on Jack's terms. He had learned to balance his career and his personal life, never forgetting the importance of the people who mattered most to him, Sarah and Noah. Life wasn't always perfect, but it was theirs, and they had built it together. On a cool autumn afternoon, Jack and Sarah sat on the porch of their home, sipping coffee as they watched the sunset. Their world was peaceful, yet the familiar sound of Noah playing in the background reminded them of just how far they had come. Sarah rested her head on Jack's shoulder, content. "Can you believe how much has changed?" she asked quietly. Jack smiled, his eyes reflecting the soft golden light of the sunset. "I've never imagined life could be this way," he said. "You've made everything better, Sarah. I never thought I'd find someone who understood me so completely." Sarah smiled, feeling the warmth of his words in her heart. "I used to think that the life I had before was all I deserved. But now, I know better. We've built something real." "We have," Jack agreed, "and it's been worth every step." They were silent for a moment, simply enjoying the comfort of each other's presence. "I'm proud of us," Sarah said softly, breaking the silence. "We've come so far, from where we both started. We've built this life, together, and I wouldn't change a thing." Jack turned to her, taking her hand in his, squeezing it gently. "Me neither," he said. "You've taught me so much. I don't think I would have been able to make it through everything without you by my side." Sarah looked up at him, her heart swelling with emotion. "I've learned a lot from you too," she said, her voice thick with gratitude. "About resilience, about believing in myself, about what it really means to love." Jack's gaze softened, his thumb gently tracing circles on the back of her hand. "I know we've both had our struggles, but together, we've made it. We've built something that's unbreakable." Sarah nodded, her eyes glistening. She had never imagined that life could turn out this way, full of love, full of possibility, full of hope. For so long, she had thought she would never have the chance to live the life she dreamed of. But now, it was real. "So, what's next?" she asked, her voice light but curious. Jack chuckled softly, leaning back in his chair. "What's next is whatever we want it to be. We've come so far, but there's still so much to look forward to." Sarah smiled, her heart light. "I like the sound of that," she said. She had always dreamed of a future filled with love and adventure. But never in her wildest dreams had she imagined that it would be with someone like Jack, someone who had shown her what it meant to truly live. As they sat together, the world around them felt as if it had been designed for them. They had built this life with their own hands, overcoming every obstacle that had been thrown their way. And now, they were ready to face whatever came next. The future was theirs to create, and with each other, there was nothing they couldn't do. Together, Sarah and Jack had found the life they were meant to live. They had found their place, not just in the world, but in each other's hearts. It was a love built on trust, patience, and the belief that anything was possible when you had the right person by your side. And as the sun set behind them, Sarah and Jack knew, with certainty, that the best chapters of their story were yet to come. In this touching and inspiring millionaire story, we follow the journey of a homeless woman who, with the kindness of a millionaire single dad, finds hope and a new life. From digging through trash on Christmas Eve to rebuilding her life, this story shows the power of second chances and the incredible impact of kindness. As their paths cross, both characters find healing and love, proving that even the hardest of struggles can lead to something beautiful. Through the twists and turns of their journey, this millionaire story unfolds, highlighting resilience, love, and personal growth. The connection they share evolves into a deep bond, filled with mutual support and understanding, ultimately proving that love, not money, is what truly transforms lives. This millionaire story is not just about wealth, but the richness of human connection and the strength to face challenges together. As their lives intertwine, we see how two people from different worlds can build a future filled with hope, dreams, and love. Through this millionaire story, we witness how the kindness of one person can change everything, leading to a life that was once thought impossible. This story is a powerful reminder that everyone deserves a second chance, and that the most valuable things in life are the connections we make with others.